Good evening, good evening, good evening. We are now live, and welcome to another edition of Monday Night Moshiach Matters, because Moshiach does matter. And as this crazy world continues to get crazier day by day, and we get closer and closer to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, the importance of learning about Mashiach and Gula continues to increase every day. And we see how right the Rebbe is on everything. So let's get cracking. We are in Parshas Vayeshev. Aleph. Dubar pa'amim b'rabois la'achroina b'pratos man achroin ki al pi kol hasimanim doreinu lehu hador achroin shel galus b'mila hador shel geula. Says, as we have expressed many times of recent, and we can see according to all the signs have already here, and we are the final generation of the exile and the first generation of the redemption. Shahari kavar siyamo as calling inim ha'avodah v'chavar oindim mochnim the gula mitzvah shlema oindim mishakti kenu tekaveh bamish. And therefore it says we are already ready and prepared, and waiting to and standing to accept and receive the true and complete redemption through our righteous Redeemer Mashiach. Mamish, like mamish literally means like how do you say mamish in the English vernacular? It means like for real. The yesh sha'alim, and so there's some questions that arise. Hari gula tilei b'kaf shekal ha'olam yihi u'machem l'kach lo rak adam echad o mispar enashim lo rak chelak echad shel ha'olam there shall call ha'olam Tribal Kashura, literally, but voids need Hay Yisrael, Ma'arba Kamvotzars, Gambo Rurin, Shell Amota Olam, Vakal Artois. So a question arises. We see that the Gula is dependent on the entire world to be ready, isn't it? This is a worldwide event. It's not an event that is only for a few specific people or a few group of people or for only portion of the world. Rather for the entire world, and the Gula is connected and dependent on the Jewish people that have been spread to the furthest corners of the world, and also on the rectification of the nations of the world and all the lands of the world. So we see that Gula is a very universal thing. Does it appear to you like the world is ready for Mashiach? The Rebbe is speaking facetiously, but the idea is he's basically saying, listen, this is a question that people could ask because the Rebbe knows this is a question people have. In fact, I've encountered this question numerous times when I've spoke to people about Gula. They say, oh, come on, our generation. How about there are so many holier generations than us? How come specifically in our generation? It doesn't appear that this generation is more special. On the contrary, it seems if anything, this generation is at a lower spiritual level than previous generations. Base. Hadavar yuvan b'hakdam hatam deklalos hishtalshalus yehem shobani yisrael begulas mumakoyim lemakoyim. And we can understand and first preface the reason in general from the amount of work that has been done through the Jewish people in the exile from place to place. First of all, we see that God has sprinkled us. He has spread the Yidden to the furthest corners of the world. Every time I used to go with my wife and my kids were traveling like random locations in the world. And I joke around, I'm like, oh, there's for sure never been any Yidden here. And all of a sudden we see like a group of from Yidden pop up. It happens all the time. God has spread us to the furthest corners of the world. Hari b'chitzonius hu yerida b'kol shepizur Rav Yosef. Kach gam ha'yerida kadoy v'Yosef hari omrim chazal ki tzedakah aseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael shepir ron the bein ha'amos. So it appears to be from a quick look from an external perspective that we have sunk very low, that God has spread us to these random places in the world. And these places seem perhaps not to have done good for the Jewish people. It seems like we've gone down to we've fallen in Hashem Yishmor in our levels in our Judaism. But as we learn, our sages teach us, in fact, that Hashem, this is from Gemara Psachim, that Hashem has done a great kindness and a great charity, if you will, to the Jewish people by spreading us across the world amongst the nations of the world. Yedua Perush Bakah Shezehu B'Kulam Hamayla Shiva Al Yidei Yedvodasam Shobani Israel. In fact, there's a tremendous advantage to the way that we conduct ourselves as Jews in the various places of the world. Asherhem Tshiavim Bedina Zera Rahim Lidlavshim. Minhagi Makoyim Umadina Bakol Makoyim Makoyim Lefi Minoi Lefi Tochnois Hamakoyim Tochnois Amshi Hamakoyim. We see that there's a unique that's what I'm looking for, a unique way of every single place in the world. If you've traveled throughout the world, even throughout America, even throughout Florida, you see, depending on the communities you're in and the places you're in, things are done very differently. It's a different type. I remember we were doing Tulucha one year when we were in Crown Heights during Shmini Atzeres, and we went to Manhattan, and for Simchas Torah, we were expecting the Chabad house to have some huge party, and they had a cigar and a wine tasting. Boy, cigar and wine tasting at Simchas Torah? What the hell is this? But it was packed events, and Shliach obviously knows his customers, and that's what draws them there. So every single specific place has a unique style to it. The way they dress, the way they talk, the way they conduct themselves in business, the general, the architecture. There's so many details, and every place has a unique thing about it. And the Rebbe says that there's a mila, there's an advantage to going to a specific place in the world and staying strong in your Judaism and working and living in accordance to the way of that specific place. Kedivre Hazal, as our rabbis teach us, Ezalach likrasa chelek b'nimisui ad shalacha b'nifsekes. V'zeh ikar gadol b'kol b'divrei Moshe masu matan hochin achar lashon b'nei adam bo'eser b'mekoyim v'achar minat. What I just basically said. Even when it comes connecting to doing business. What's up, Doug? When you conduct business, the Rambam speaks about this at length. In many halachas, the Rambam says, and it goes according to the minhag of the place. Meaning the specific place you're in, the measure of a particular weight or a value of a particular coin may vary from place to place. I mean, those were the times when the Rambam wrote the Mishnah Torah, but in our days, we see the same kind of idea. So the way business is conducted in different places, it could be offensive to someone who's not familiar with the laws and customs of the place to conduct business and not in the way of that place. Beautiful. So the Rebbe brings out a point, and it's from the pasuk we know in Pirkei Avos, and it says, all of your deeds should be for the sake of heaven, and you should know God in all of your ways. And this is something in addition to Torah and mitzvot. Torah, Tefillah, Gemot Chasidim, the three pillars the world stand on. That is the basic fundament of every Jew. That doesn't change. But in addition to that, we each have our specific mission in this world. And we each have our specific way of conducting ourselves. The way we dress. I happen to be wearing a purple shirt today. Some of the Lubavitchers might find that offensive, that someone is wearing a purple shirt. And in Israel, probably wouldn't be too common. And here in South Florida, this may be considered overdressed for a lot of Lubavitchers. So the point is, I'm not just talking about clothing. I'm saying every single thing you do has a unique way about it based on the specific place that you're in. And the most important thing is that the front and center in your mind is God. That whatever you do, the most important thing is to know God in all of your ways. Go according to, as long as it's not against halacha and you're not doing anything wrong, you can be your unique self. God didn't make us into photocopies. He didn't make us into robots. We all have a unique way of expressing ourselves. And in different places in the country, those customs are different. The custom of dress, the custom of business, the custom of cars, of homes, of millions of different things, of food. So the Rebbe says the fact that Jews are spread in the furthest corners of the world and conduct themselves for the sake of heaven, you remain a Torah-fearing, a Torah-observant, God-fearing Jew. That's the most important thing. Then there's an advantage to that. There's an advantage to the unique abilities and the unique ways of each people in each place. The most important thing is you should know God in everything you do. Your relationship with God isn't just when you're in the Beit Knesset, when you're learning Torah, when you're davening. It's 24 hours a day. It's how you talk. It's how you speak. It's how you interact with others, with family members, with friends, with neighbors, with business. All of these things need to reflect the fact that you are a God-fearing Jew. That's the most important thing. That you should be trustworthy. You should be honest. You should be a mensch. You should have a good name. When people hear your name, they should speak nicely. Oh yeah, he's a mensch. He's a good. This is an addition to Torah mitzvahs, and that variant changes in place to place. Chassidus, as Chassidus explains, Bior Ma'am Hazal Lo Hagala Kodesh Boas Yisrael Levein Ha'amot Ela Kadeshi Tosafo Elim Gorim. So there's basically a pasuk that says that, and also in Gemara Pesachim, that God spread the Jewish people amongst the nations of the world in order to add on to converts, that there should be converts, those who convert. According to Chassidut, this doesn't mean non-Jewish people, so they should become Jews. That's not a Indian. It happens, and it's very well received when it's done in the proper way. And in fact, many holy Jews were once non-Jews. But we don't go out of our way. You don't try to cause a non-Jew to become a Jew. You cause a non-Jew to keep the 7 laws of Noach and become a God-fearing, righteous Gentile. And in their own path, if ultimately they feel that there's a higher calling for them and they want to become a Jew, goes on to hate. But no one, God forbid, should be going around to goyim and trying to convince them to become Jews. That's not what it means that God spread us amongst the nation to add in converts. What it means, garim, converts, romaz mitayeches ninetzotzois kedusha. It means to convert the sparks of holiness that have been trapped amongst the nations of the world. And this is the reason why God has spread us across to the further corners of the world. That we should elevate the sparks that are trapped amongst the nations of the world, not to get them to become Jews. On the contrary, how are you doing? Good to see you, Levi Yitzchak. On the contrary, you're supposed to dissuade them from becoming Jews. You're not supposed to encourage them. And it's known that many times that a non-Jew who goes through the process of conversion, it's very difficult. And it's supposed to be. The Beis Din is supposed to push them away. The rabbi is supposed to push them away. You're supposed to do everything in your power to stop them, because it's a test. Because if they really want it, they'll keep coming. And the obstacles of determination usually are the rub that helps a Beis Din decide whether or not this is really a Jew that has a godly soul that needs to have a proper conversion for that to be revealed, or it's someone who has a fancy and that seems to like, the Jewish way of doing things, and as soon as it's hard for them, they say, it's not for me, it's too difficult. So the idea is not to encourage that. That's not what it means that we should seek out converts. What it means is we should seek out these godly sparks. There's godly energy. It's known that in the world of Tohu, it says when God was creating and destroying worlds, in the Olam HaTohu, there was 288 divine sparks that fell from the world of Tohu and implanted themselves into this physical world of Tikkun. And they're spread across the whole world. They're not major. Doesn't mean there's 288, chunks of gold, Just like there's 600,000 root souls of the Jewish people, but there's millions of Jews. These 208 main sparks spread out into more and more and more sparks. and they're not visible. This is holy sparks. This is spiritual energy that is trapped in everything. It could be in food, in different places in the world. And through the Jews doing mitzvot, especially physical-based mitzvot, we elevate those sparks. And that's what it means that God spread us amongst the world to bring out converts, to convert what appears to be a non-godly entity and transform it into a godly entity. And this is what we saw, that when we elevated the sparks, it's not Mitzrayim, it's Mitzrayim, excuse me, that through elevating these sparks, through our service and rectifying these holy sparks in every different country in the world, we elevate them and return them back to their source, the divine chariot above. And this we see as the advantage and the reason why God has done a great kindness by spreading the Yidden to the furthest corners of the world amongst different countries and different nations. And this is what it means when God told Yaakov that he will spread out to the south, to the north, to the east, and the west. And specifically by the Yidden going to the furthest corners of the world, amongst the nations of the world, we're able to enclose in a panimi, in an inward way. And then we're able to dwell in this country and be amongst the people in the specific place we find ourselves. Just like we think we're moving, we have an idea. I have an idea, let's move so-and-so. It's not your idea, it's God's idea. God directs the steps of men. When we're there, we have free choices what we're going to do. But ultimately, God is guiding us in every step of the way. And therefore, every single Jew is empowered and capable of rectifying and purifying every single place, wherever we may find ourselves. And the whole idea is in order to build a dwelling place for Hashem below. I'm sure you all heard the joke about the Breslover Chassid and the Lubavitcher Chassid who are who get sent down to Gehenna and hell. And they're both in Gehenna, they're in hell. And the Breslover Chassid screams out to his Rebbe, Rebbe Nachman. And Rabbi Nachman, answers him, and he pulls him by the payas, and he takes him and pulls him out of Gehenna. And then the Lubavitcher Chassid screams out, Rebbe! And he said, welcome to your new shlichut. Because wherever we are, we know that God sent us in this specific place in order to elevate it. There's a purpose. And therefore, it says the whole idea is to build a dwelling place for Hashem down here in the lower worlds. And every single where we are is in a specific purpose to make that place a derba tachtonim. God wants to live in the kishkas, in the details of everywhere we are, in our whole being. Noisef lazam toisef ayidei avodas bederek zu betoichef umetzlach v'hatzlach ba'avoda kamuvan pashtus hatam v'havdili menhagim shebein medina meladina harihu machamas betochai nois menchedei shel medina lochein shemenhagim al pi menhagim makoyim ata'amim. That every single place, of course, the Rebbe is just emphasizing again this idea that each place has a unique, specific aspect of it. And if we find ourselves in that place, that is there. We're there for a specific reason, to elevate that place and elevate it and bring it to a higher place, that we should be successful even more from where it was before. And when a Jew finds himself in a particular place, In Hag, we must conduct ourselves according to the place, right? What is the old secular saying? When in Rome, right? When in Rome, you conduct yourselves according to the place. עד שהוא צריך גם לנצל עשר מנהגים ומקרים בעבודת השם שלוי, שהרי כל על ידי כך מביא הדבר תוספת להצלחה, גם בעבודת והצעה למנהגים ומקרים. And we find that we will be even more successful when we work in accordance to the customs of the place, right? That's how you really, really become successful. You got to go. You have to understand the particular place. There's so many different nuances to every single place. And wherever you may find yourself, know that God sent you there and you have a specific mission and you're going to be successful in your mission. And the Rebbe said, in order to do this, to become successful in your mission in your particular place, there's two levels. Aleph, the first is by affecting the innermost dimension of the lower place. And that it is that it penetrates the holiness, even in the lowest amongst the places. But nevertheless, so in other words, one way, it's two steps. The first step is you have to get into the kishkas of the place. It doesn't mean, God forbid, to fall. Unfortunately, we see that sometimes. That you didn't wind up in a particular place, and instead of elevating the place, well, the place swallows you up. Miami, Florida is a perfect example. Hashem Yishmor, I don't want to speak about negative things, but I unfortunately have witnessed horror stories of Lubavitchers, of from Yidden, of Bahrain, who come here, and next thing you know, the beard's getting trimmed, and next thing you know, it's getting lighter and lighter and lighter, and Shem Yishmor. And I had a shliach, I'm not going to name any names, who told me, you have to be very careful with bringing Bahrain here, because the Bahrain by day are not the same as the Bahrain by night. There's so many places so close by that it's just so easy to get yourself in all sorts of trouble. And Shem Yishmor. The point is that what we're meant to do is to go to a place and keep our Yiddishkeit strong, stay connected to your source, of course, Torah mitzvot, Gimel Chasidim, that doesn't change. I'm sorry, Torah, Tefillah, Gimel Chasidim. And we have to take our energy and penetrate into the place, right? So the place becomes affected. But what's happening is the place is still down there. You're still coming from a higher place, and you're bringing energy into the place. But now there's the second stage of your work. To rectify and refine the place itself. You're not just bringing godly energy into the place. You're literally transforming the place itself. And you're transforming it into a place of Torah and mitzvot. By building institutions that are foundations of Torah. Tefillah, Gimel Chasidim, prayer and good deeds. Beti, Knesset, Ben Midrashim, houses of prayer and houses of study. כך שמקום נעשה כאילו באופן עצמי ואין לו זיכוך והשפעה במקום אלא יויסר. יסתר מזה לא רק כאילו אלא באופן ומגלי נס ומעלה שבתור נעצמי שמקום נעשה כמו עצם עצמו ואדרבה אנשי המקום פועלת בתורה ומצוות מוזמנים עצמיס והטעה למנהגים ודרכים מיוחדים so not only are the place not affecting you in a bad way, and not only are you bringing energy into the place, you're transforming the place. Now the very people in the place are keeping Torah and mitzvot. They want to participate in your activities. They want to help grow bigger buildings and more not just for the sake of buildings, but so they should be filled with Torah and mitzvot. So you've totally now succeeded in transforming the place. Gimel. And according to this, we could see the great advantage of our generation regarding previous generations. But Doiros Hakadomim Lo Haya Pizor Gado Shobena Yisro Bakal Tzivoy Tero Kafi Shuhum Kim B'Dereno. In previous generations, when the Jewish people were not spread across the four corners of the world like they are now, Lo Miviyam Ezman Shabayat Hamikdash Ayak Kia Kinish Be'Yisrael Hayo Beretz Israel. And a few of the Arishayim Shal Galus is Gororoy Yehudim Rak Medinas Siyami. The Rebbe said in previous generations the times of the base of Migdash, the Galut didn't really go so far. Sure, the Jewish people left Israel, but it wasn't like it is now. And even previous generations, right? You look at the concept of shlichus that really started with the Rebbe Rashab, was the first Rebbe to send out shluchim. So it's only a handful. And then the Frierdiker Rebbe upped the ante and sent out more. Still, I think it was under a dozen, it wasn't a lot. And now look at our Rebbe. Look at there's Chabad houses in the furthest corners of the world, because there's Jews in the furthest corners of the world. So only now do we see the fact that there has been such a spreading out of Jews in Judaism to the furthest corners of the world. This didn't exist in previous times. Only now in our generation do we see the spreading out of Jews in such a far way. We're in a multitude of countries across the world. In our generation, we literally see that Jews are literally in the furthest corners of the world. And they're keeping Torah mitzvot. It's from Yidden. And not only are they keeping Torah mitzvot, but they've enclosed themselves into the garments and the ways of the place. And we're keeping Torah mitzvot, and we're staying strong as Jews. But we're enclosed and functioning based on the place where we live. Move on. And the Rebbe said he's answering the question that he started off this whole sequel with. So what are we going to talk about now? Because it seems like we already answered our question. But it says that the original question was, how can we say that in our generation particularly, we're the generation of Megula? What makes us so special compared to other generations? And on the contrary, it seems like if anything, we're in a lower spiritual state than other generations. And the Rebbe just answered that only now in our generation, where we're spread out to the furthest corners of the world, is it time for Mashiach to come. Because the energy of Mashiach has to penetrate into the depths of the whole entire world. It's not meant for a select group. The whole idea is not Mashiach to stay in Crown Heights or for Chabad. It has to go spread out through the entire world. And because of that, because we weren't present in the furthest corners of the world, it wasn't possible before. Only now, when we see that we're so spread out all over the world, that now is such an opportune time. And it's a time that the energy now, all those sparks that traveled everywhere, have finally been elevated and lifted. The Rebbe is interesting because we spoke about France, I believe, last week's parsha. the one before. This is not the first time the Rebbe is speaking about France, but he's doing so again. He said one of the signs we see of Mashiach being here is that even France, which is such a lowly place, we don't mean physically. I mean it's a. I've been to France. It's refined garbage. That's not a nice way to say it. I don't know how to explain it. It's there's a very they act sophisticated, but there's a very animalistic. I don't know how to say it, but it's like an animal like that has nice food and perfume and there's a certain culture about France of refinements of the food and the way people conduct themselves, but there's a grub. There's a very, very animalistic undertone to it. And the Rebbe said the fact that France has already been rectified and refined is another sign of Geula being here. Yusha as Ari Amina Gaev. Na'ado Mishvi'im Bahar Tzion Yishpat as Ari Esau. Isla Shama Lemucha. And again, it says God will judge Esau. Esau, representing for the most part the western travel of the nations of the world, versus Shishmael, which is the eastern travel. It's the Arab countries and the Roman, the Catholic countries. So we have to understand. The way we see specifically how France has been transformed from exile to redemption, Yehudim לצרפת, ומאי נפקא מינה הזכרה בפרשת של הדבר בפסוק, בפרט בייעוד של עסק. The Geula, we see in such a place like France that was so far away. We know that in every generation we have a holy leader and we have the opposite, right? Moshe had Bilam was the evil prophet, corresponding to him. We know in the times of the Alter Rebbe there was Napoleon. Napoleon was a great sorcerer, by the way, just like Hitler, Yermak Shamo, and many who came before him. Very, very entrenched, and the story that when the Alter Rebbe escaped from Napoleon, to risk his life to go back and get his slippers, because they realized that his assistant left his slippers behind. And he was so worried that if Napoleon got a hold of his slippers, because of the holiness of his shoes, that he would use those holy items for not good. All black magic has to have a root in white magic, which has its root in Kedusha. If you look back to the ancient secret societies, they all studied Sefer Yetzirah. They all based their twisted concepts on Kedusha, because darkness has no metzias without light. You need light for darkness. So they would take holy objects. What do you think the Catholic Church took so many artifacts from the temple? Because they wanted holy things, because the holy things have the energy inside of them. That's why they're all trying to take Jerusalem, and they want to use that energy for the opposite of good. We see something special connected to the country of France. Beishis HaGolus are b'Tzarfat. Yesh lomar hatam ki shleimus habirur ha'oidam mihisar leHashem Melucha mifal ayidei habirur ve'iloi shel Tzarfat kolakam. And it says that part of the redemption is, it says God will lead, he will rule forever. There'll be no more exile, and he will be the only ruler in the world. Excuse me. And in order to do that, every single country and every single nation in the world has to be rectified. And the Rebbe said the fact that France has already been rectified and the godly sparks have already been sucked out of France is another sign of the redemption being here. Hey, Adavarim Yuvano the Orha Chidush Vishinoi Biyachar Shal Yisrael B'Doreno Zeh the Medina Sarfat Gabi Hayakshaba Doro Shah Admor Hazaki. Oh, talking about the Alter Rebbe now. I hope I didn't speak too soon. Because usually, I guess it's triggering things in my brain when we're getting to these subjects and I start talking. Okay, so we see the difference in the times of the Alter Rebbe in France and our times now in France. Yudok Shabaktafois Admor Hazaki. Fitza Muhammad ben Napoleon Tzarfati Tzavara Alexander Harusi. We know that during the war between the French and the Russians, and given the choice between supporting Napoleon and the French or Alexander and the Russians, the Alter Rebbe found it was better to support the Russians and Alexander as opposed to Napoleon. Savar Admor Hazakin. Adif the Russia nitcha tinetrech. And the reason why is because the Alter Rebbe said that if Russia wins the war, the Jewish people will be imprisoned with their bodies. And our Judaism will stay strong, our spiritual part will stay strong. With the French, unfortunately, it will be like America, meaning that we will not be in any kind of physical prisons. On the contrary, they'll say, come, enjoy the culture, enjoy all these wonderful things, and forget that you're a Yid. That's what happened in Greece, right? So the Alter Rebbe said it's better that our bodies are in prison than our souls are in prison. Therefore, he supported Russia instead of France. Okay, Yerova ha'oiser b'Yisrael v'roim karen Yisrael. Alon mipardo mitrako levan. Shel Yisrael ma'avihem b'shamayim. V'im nitzach achad Alexander. That's what I just said. Im ki Yeravo ein b'Yisrael yifra karen Yisrael. V'chasha v'chara v'yibrash levan. Ha'avihem b'shamayim. Okay. Hatam l'chach haya ki Tzarfat ha'medina atzmoi k'mavia es ruach. Because France is a place that it has such a spirit of impurity that there's no knowledge and faith in Hashem. It doesn't exist in their lexicon. It's something that's the klipa zo shel malchus Tzarfat Napoleon. Toikev haklipa hadin akasha. The Rebbe is saying that the Alter Rebbe knew that a spiritual klipa is worse than a physical klipa. In other words, when someone is telling you, do whatever you want, and they're encouraging you to go against Hashem, and it gets in the you're not in prison physically, but unfortunately, it could have a worse damage. Hamas go ois with nasois to lois with some moch. Call koicha v'goroise. Doimar koichi va'atzem al yedei umisalik. Hashgacha amuna ubatuchon belokui. Ukafim avora zoid armar emsoi loya rak ini zamani ki ela dara noiga the cause money v'hadoreish l'achazah ki yadua b'divrei hayamin. Atrophysis, Ashanas Tovkov Mentes. Yaga Vafko Idologit ideology. In near Clarishi Omo Shinoi Ikreba Edom Kudo. Vafko Za Yusa Achar mit Orois Ikrim Shalehem Shtastoy, Shisoides and Had. Sha'oidam u'medina v'sarava ar hayom hazeh ar hamachad. That began, the Alter Rebbe broke something in the klipa of France, and we see traveling up into our generation when the Rebbe totally broke France completely, when he took the nigun of France and transformed it into the national anthem of France into a Hasidic nigun. So he's saying even starting with the times of the Mittler Rebbe, things even started changing. Tzarfasis, Haisa Mishalas, Tzarfas, Misura, Bidei, Melech Omocha, Vehe, Umnahagoi, Bekol, Sha'ala, Bida Asar, Mafacha, Hayasa, Musavat, Sais, Al Kaf, Shabene Adam, Chofshim, and Ha, Keretzin. Lochin, Hadichin, Es Hamelech Hamalucha Kadesh Yitcharer Es Hamedina Mishlitasa Mishalasa Shanalas Hamedina Ta'avor Lidei Chatzibor Minatzichid Es Kar Anshe Hamedina Avapish. And then I'm just going to go through this quickly and then kind of some of outside, just going through the journeys of the fixing of France. Toisef Chayfshir Gashbis Tzedek Yishar Leva Hayam Levi Hayirois Esirois Bnei Israel Hayim Mechivan Shedavar Lo Yishtasef Al Yisoid Amora B'Bitachon B'Shem Abi Hadavar Amo Gish Lafosh Baruchnis Chayfshir V'Ini Das. The idea of increasing the das, the knowledge of Hashem, and then Haga Amar Zakin Makal HaTeichel with Malchus Sarfat. That's why it says the Alter Rebbe fought with all his power against France. But the it's just repeating the same thing we just said, that it would be more undesirable for the Jews if France won as opposed to Russia. And now we see throughout all these years that France is now a place of Torah. There's a Tamchet Tamim Yeshiva there. It's been totally transformed. Okay, but and we could just now further speak about the unique things specifically in our generation. And it's connected also to France. Specifically through the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which took this transformation of France to a whole nother level. And how that the klipa of France was still very strong. But the Frierdiker Rebbe, especially through spreading Chassidus, this began the process with the Alter Rebbe, who had to keep on and he continued further and further. Right before Shemhatzad Sarfas Lo Hayat Sugal Al Kach Lidei Yirash Shemayim Shalom. וגם אצל רבותינו נשיאנו לא היה בקביעס עניין גילוי וחפץ תורה חסידות צרפת. And we see throughout the years. And it started with the Alter Rebbe, and how much more so the Rebbe is taking through all of the generations of how, through the spreading of Hasidus and the teaching of Judaism, that the furthest corners of the world have been affected. And even in France, we've seen it's been elevated. We see things literally went from one side to the complete other. Asher lo rak b'shor hakadusha v'hagiyam v'hi'ir gam sham ela shehudim lomdim Torah makim mitzvahs v'ras shemayim. So the place like France that was so devoid of anything connected to godliness or Judaism, anything connected to God, and not only has the klipa, the stronghold of evil, been shattered in France. But now you see it's a place that there's many Jews learning Torah, keeping mitzvot. There's yeshivas there. The Rebbe says, especially we see after the Second World War, that the Jews, through Hashgacha Pratis, after the Second World War, that really began the process of spreading out the Yid into the furthest corners of the world. And we see specifically, like in a place like France, that many Jews wound up there. And now it got transformed into a place of Torah. Shechafatzes HaTorah v'Yehudas v'Klal. Shechafatzes Menuchas Chidus v'Yechad. Torah and Chassidus. Oidezer shehakimu shem riboy musoidri shel Torah v'Tefillah Klal Michad Yeshivas Tavkei Tamim Lubavitch, as we said before. The Frierdiker Rebbe established the Lubavitch Yeshiva over there. Gam achi tamimim kayutzer v'zeh gam kama v'kama snifim, and there's many branches. V'chein masoidis chinuch makol yoy al taharas hakadosha, and also there's many preschools and schools for younger children. Difsim shames farim b'gala haTorah apenimis haTorah kazev oifan hachoydach u'moisif la'or, and it continued spreading out more and more and more light. Al b'yonam muvan hachidush b'devar Hashem shazeh b'noiga la'avodas ha'adam b'klalos ha'olam mador l'dorah hagia yichudim l'mekayimos chadashim l'ruchim yoser. And we see ever since the Second World War, Yidden have spread further and further across the world into further places away. Kedei l'pal sham es habura v'kadesh shai shleimus v'yirahu b'sha'a. And it's all and we found that the places we wind up, we have had a positive impact, please God, and increased these places to places that are Torah and mitzvot that never used to be. Especially with our Rebbes, how they spread out the wellsprings of Chassidus. And even more throughout the generations. Okay. Thank you for filling us in on that information. Ashihi Hayisa Makoyim Hatachtain Beyoser. Menhagim Makoyim Shalo Hayal Ajisira Le'ene Yira Shemayim. And they've increased in Torah and mitzvot, increased in fear of heaven. Makal Makoyim Hatshuvo Medina Zeh Yehudim B'Derenu Biror B'Zechach Ech Oiser. Ad Sha'adarabba Ad Sha'adarabba Nitzah Es Minhagi HaMakoyim. Especially again, we see how the spreading of Chassidus through our Rebbes has now impacted and made its way to many countries that were devoid of Judaism, especially like France. France, by the way, as we know the Rebbe studied in Sorbonne. He majored in a dual major in engineering and physics, and he got his degree. And we see it's a very special thing for a Rebbe to immerse himself in secular wisdom. It was really unheard of. All Rebbes know all matters of the world, but to get a degree was something else. And it was in France. So, there's France has a very special place in the Rebbe's hearts. And of course, Russia, also America. But anyways. Okay. Zayin v'yesh lo shekar v'zeh noiva kach shahaya b'seder etz nasi hador etz mekor koshav and more v'mekoyim hakuvua shavra b'zishim nasina ad kol kadoshim arachami admor haya b'medina Rusi. And also we see, of course, Russia, right? Avrido kasher yotzra v'hadina hahi devar tetechil ha'admor marash zerak ba'ifen ariya Almanach lechazor etzel nasi doreno noisef. We see something very unique in our Rebbes and our generation, more so than in previous generations. And specifically in a place like Russia. So we see the Rebbe is really emphasizing France and Russia in this week's Sikha. Both places that were completely devoid of Judaism that got elevated through our Rebbes. Yeshiva, so Medina's Acharis. But Klaus Shinois Nisioise Halakoi the Shalois Tekufis. Shalva Arach Esar Shanim. It's talking about the 3 periods of leadership of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The first 10 years, Kufat Harishina, Beikar Berusia, which were mainly in Russia. Kufat Hashini, the second period of the Frierdiker Rebbe's leadership, which is in Poland. Kufot Hashlishis, and the third period of the Frierdiker Rebbe's leadership in Artsot Habrit in America. Apparently, there's very deep connections to the sports. That's what the theme of the Sikh is tonight. That were elevated from the Frierdiker Rebbe in first Russia, then Poland, and then in America. And the main place is not only did they go to these places and spread out Judaism and spread out the wellsprings of Hasidus, but in such a way of a calm way that the energy permeated, right? That's the thing we're talking about, that the energy not went into the place, but the place itself got elevated. יש לנו to say שאויל ועצר נעשי דורנו עצמו הישראל הידבשוס באויפני בעבודת שינויים. אחר ברוסיה שבו עבדו את עבודת של רבותינו נשיאנו עד ארצות הברית. Until we got here to America. חצי כדור התחתון, the lowest part of the globe. Meant spiritually wise. העניק Devar es a Biur, so but I'm told I never saw it that the Rebbe had said on more than one occasion that Australia is even lower spiritually than America. Anik Devar es a Biur shall call Koimois Shaba Oilam Gam Shalatachton be Yoiser Comedina Safatri Kotsebezet, Zahu Hilu shall the rain of Zet, the Gabi and Doro shall Admazak. And now we're connecting what's so unique in our generation compared to the beginning of the spreading out of the wellsprings of Torah, like in the times of the Alter Rebbe. Kafishu Ruim Zois Bigilui Biyachas Kufi Medira Sarfat. V'achi Abu Yuchal Shana Sel Yidei Avodah Selsha Hafatza Satora Yechadu Rasachafutza Samunitza Hamesha Kama Vakama Doren Shama Admo Hazakin. The Rebbe says we see throughout the years, we see a major difference in how things are now compared as to the time where they were of the Alter Rebbe. Avoda shapuala b'rov v'zachar gam b'kol ha'olam v'ad v'ikar v'kol karabim the geula she'atzir shlemas ha'b'yurash v'kol ha'olam harinu b'derenu zeh v'kabal ma'ez kavakadosh ha'arma nasi derenu koach v'noisef. So we see in the times of the Alter Rebbe, it was the beginning of the process of refining and rectifying these places that were antagonistic to Judaism. But now we see throughout the 7 generations that not only is it the beginning of the process of refining these countries and these nations like France, but on the contrary, it is completely transferred over, and the work is completed. These places, all the divine sparks have been sucked out of there, and all the rectification has been done. But and we see the amount of Bali Chuvas that have been made. This was not a big thing. It wasn't really a thing at all. Our Rebbe started this whole Baal Tshuva movements of bringing Jews back. But after Kach, Oy Yoiser, Al Yudei Admor Nesham Se'edin, Shahari Sham, Ha'amim Rabois, Achi Shem Hashem, Shem Al Benyan, Shalacham Shech Tashrin Ayin Beis, Yedua, Lavshel Katev, the Chedach Hemshech. It's talking about the different Rebbes and what they brought in different stages of spreading out the wellsprings, like now he's talking about the Rebbe Rashab and his Hemshech Ayin Beis. Va'ikar Hashlemas would be right about Ifan Shah Kaviyos, Shavus, Ifan Penim. And the main thing is that the work they did is entered in a deep way. Ado Ifan Shah Hafatza Nasa Bedoreno, Ayde Kovikodash Arme Nasi, Admo Nasi Doreno, Asher Noisef, Lidasha, Tzarfat, Kama Pami, Amr, Jim Amri, Hasidus, Vasichis, Shlak, Lishem, Shluchim, Mugana. He's talking about the work of sending out shluchim and refining these places. But Abdu Abodasar Belimra Nigla Torah Benimis Torah, Vachem Shlach the Shem, Kasvi Hasidus, Igris, Akoidish, Shaloi, Vashem, Gam, Hochnoi, Kama, Minim, the voice. Hold on, I want to see where the brackets end. Benoisef Lakama Divrei Torah. Kzvoi Shem Yitzer the voice. The cloudus Poalo Shem Birov Ishochak Bedora Bederek Lapshus Haide Helek Benemusi Bedafka Mataki Rashamayim Hidor. The Rebbe is just saying we could see palpably the difference in the transformation of these places from when it first started in the work of the Alter Rebbe and spreading out Hasidus, like in the Tanya, we have Yud Tes Kislev coming up. And that was the beginning. It's known when the Alter Rebbe got freed from prison. It was not only that the decree that got broken down here, but it's known that the decree got broken above. And it was a green light from the Alter Rebbe to begin the process of really, really spreading out Hasidus to the furthest corners of the world. That was like the wellsprings. Now it was time. He realized that the decree was canceled. And that's when things went into full gear. But you see how much further ahead we are than we were in previous times. And the level of Judaism and of Torah that has penetrated to the depths of these countries around the world and transformed them. Let me see, of course, when the Alter Rebbe, when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, Yisoid Shem Shishivas Tavchei Tamim Oid Mesoidos, and he established many branches of Tavchei Tamim yeshivas. Excuse me. Amina Vishlach Shluchim Al Manas LeChashiva Shem LeVanois Mesoidos. A Chafitz Torah. I do this. B'Kla B'Torah Chasidus B'Yachad. Increased the spreading out of the wellsprings even more so. And especially with Hasidus. Kafi Sheroyim b'Mochash u'b'Prat Sheni Acharonis. As Hatzlach al Hagadoira Meruba b'Kach Puala Shel Hafatz Torah B'Yehudas u'B'Yehudas Chutza Medina Sarfat Od Medina Sarfat Hoyach V'Moisiv or increasing in light. Ado Ifrin Shemaitzem Lezer Shenasi Doreno Noisim Kwach LaHamshich Kedusha Im Tachtoi. That it's through the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe that coming over here to America that has enabled us to be successful in the work we're doing now. And he's transformed America into a place of Torah. It's really true if you think about it. It's kind of crazy. I just look at where I look at my neighborhood in the last 15 years. It's mind-boggling. When we first moved here 15 years ago, there was a few from families. But it's crazy. There must be 10 shuls, Orthodox shuls within walking distance from my house. You see in Miami, you can go to any supermarket and see so many people with kippahs on their heads. It never used to be. You see the transformation. It's unbelievable. It's really turned into a place of Torah. Yeshivas Tamchei Tamimim Sham Komo Lubavitch L'Tchil Gilu Shezau Oisu Davara Atzmai. ואין צריך לחזקק ההשפעה במקורו. כיוון שנעשה בדיוק כמה העניין עצמו. ונועס לזה מתופסים שם דברי תורה בתורה ניגל לתורה חסידס. חידוש תורה, שגם זה מרגיש איך שצרפת נעשים בכל ענייני תורה וכל העולם כולו, שגם אחרים מקבלים ענייני התורה מתופסים Say the Kolim, the Merit we have, Oisius, because it was the Kamar, the Hatzlachoy, shall we see the tremendous, the Rebbe says, amount of activities and the amount of work that we have done in order to get us to this place. Hein hagiliui before Sha Akoichis Asher Koikadishma Armead Mornasi the Reinu Ashkia Shape Mishanim Shvandazer Asher Bahayusan Nasi Hador Hanasi Hu Akol Loisin Hu Akor the Adsum the Kar Anshe Hador. It is the job of the leader of the generation to give power to the entire generation, and we see how much power we've been given from the work of the leader of our generation. Especially in such a low place like here in America. That this place has literally become transformed to a place of Torah and mitzvot. Just like France before us. Yes. And there is to say, now we're still talking about France. And whatever, we already repeated. Sarfat he Melashan Tziruf. So Sarfat, the Hebrew letters that spell out France, is from the same Lashon of Tziruf, which is like a combination. She means Bata Esa Einin Shel Tziruf Ubiror V'Zuchol, referring to like combining this concept of refining and purifying a place. Kafishan Amar B'Noga the Geula, and it's referring to the Geula, the redemption. She's Baru, is Barnu, but Sirfui Rabim. Shulu Harihu Baal Ayideh Shlemos Habiror Hatziruf Shokah Ha'inam. And this the redemption is going to be when we see where we're holding now, how the entire world has already been refined and rectified. Lohaisif, in addition to this, France, Sarfat, is also the gematria of 770. So 770 is the gematria of Beit Mashiach, the house of Mashiach, and also of France. Shleimas Mispar Sheva. It's a completion of the number 7. Just third point. Kafisha call Echad Koloma Esther, Kafisha call Echad Koloma Mea, right? 7 times 10 and 7 times 100. Mishnei Echad, and combining them both together. Rishon Moshe Davar Zem Rumas Birurim, Shal Medina is Halum Nigmar Nishlam, Birur call Inam Shnifarar, Shivas Yume. Abinyan Bekah Hapratim Beprati Haprat. Yes, okay. 770 is on this part Habayit Shal Kovekodesh Aminasi the Rain. And of course, we know that 770 is the home of the leader of the generation. 770, Eastern Parkway. Ashtar Rochaya Evan Vavodasai Sha'a Be'Esser Shanim Ha'achrim Shachayim Chayoseh Ba'almedin. We see that the Frierdiker Rebbe spent the last period of his leadership in America and under running out of 770. But Artsoi Tabrit, V'yesh Marshes Al Murim Mazgame Indian Hashemi should be roar in Tziruf. So Nasa Kamayet Atzmo Abayet Shal Nasi the Rain. The Koroi shall have fats minutes or chutz of Ismanazer, but cultivate the table. Okay. V'yesh Lohisef, in addition to this. She'inin Zeh Oimer Hagasha Yisra V'chelik Aminimusi Nitzalim as Hatachnais Hamakaim Gufa the Milasei the Golus as Aetz Bamakoim Zeb or Efer Shumurgash Bamakoim Nasa Kavua Bakoi in the Torah mitzvahs. And not only has it been transformed into a place of Torah and mitzvahs, but it has become permanent. In other words, it's one thing that this it's fashionable now to be Jewish, right? So no, in these places it has literally been totally transformed. That it has permanently affected the place. Bishmar to say Shahu Bahal Hatilui Gadei the Paul as to be roar Batar Toing Be Yoser Sukukim Bakar Ha'etzim Mitzar Bachinas Agilui Shabo Yesh Hiluk Ben Yoin the Tartoin Yicholim excuse me the Hamshech Alukus Bamakoim Shahu Kli Mukasher Lozep, Masha Ain Kim Boko Ha'etz, After the Morav the Trafasta Fila Moka Mataklan Eno Kala Kli, או יסר וזה להמשך עצם העצמם. וכן גם לאידך דווקא באמצעות המקום התחתון נזכר לעצם. פה עצם בירור וכל אינם. The Rebbe is referring to what we said earlier in the Sikha, that we see that the Frierdiker Rebbe, and our Rebbe, of course, have gone to that second stage. The first stage is not only did they bring Judaism and permeate into the physical places where they lived and they brought Torah to, but they literally transformed those places until they actually became true centers of Jewish life and of Torah and mitzvot observance. You look at the Frierdiker Rebbe, you look at our Rebbe, you see it's unbelievable, the transformation of the world that's taken place. Okay, test. And according to this, we can understand also how we have completed the refining of the entire world for redemption. Amazing. And we are now here at the time of that God will judge the mount of Esau, and he will rule forever and ever. And we see, of course, just like the rectification and the elevation of the exile of France, as we said above, Aleph. Because France was a very lowly place. And it was a place that was so low and yet has been rectified. And the rectifying of France not only affected France, it affected the entire world. Because we're talking about combining and rectifying, which is the same thing that happened in the whole world. And base, Biror Shel Tzarfat. Merumaz, Gam Gilui Etzem Jenes as a Koch, the Vora es Kol Ininim B'Shleimus. If you're that the very essence of the place has been transformed, and along with the essence of the world, because it's a basic concept, right? If you want to lift up a building and you go to the bottom of the building, you can lift the whole thing up. So the Rebbe is basically saying that by elevating France, by getting to such a low place and lifting it up, the whole entire world got lifted up with it. Excuse me, Yud. Oh, it's a short signal. We're going to be done early tonight. Kedei lahakal oy Yisrael hayehudi ro'eh davar pela asher mitbata b'gilui enei basar es abira haficha hana b'pa b'tzarfat. Yidua mufarsam v'kol medina yesh nigun miyuchat. The Rebbe is now talking about the very specific nigun, the national anthem of France that, of course, they abandoned after the Rebbe took it and transformed it into a Hasidic nigun. Nigun or Medina, because the national anthem of a country, it's like its flag. It's a representative of the nation. And when the Rebbe transformed and took the nigun of France, the national anthem of France, and transformed it to a Hasidic nigun, it's known the Rebbe took out the ministering angel of France above. And that was it. That was like the knockout punch to France. Sha'oisim sharim o negunim v'sifa o mo'ora v'shimoy matam amedina. Az kasher hashuvi o medina nosafim yichtav v'mo'oros v'shamiim v'siyonim. Other exact kasher be koach v'nitzagim shel amedina v'sim the medina achrei v'katuv as we just said. Uvan shenigun amedina nitzak dugma shel amedina. It's an example of the country. The song. Al achas kama v'kama niguna shel medina tzarfat ki yadua shenigun itbabra be'es u'mafacha. בפרט על פי פנימי סנינים הרי ידוע שלכל מדינה גדולה יש שער למים. That's what they were just finished saying. Every single country has a ministering angel above. There's to say, she said, גם כן, Kasherim Nigun HaMedina, and it's also connected to the song of the country. In other words, every song has a spark from above that draws it down. That's going to be cool once when the national anthem becomes a Hasidic nigun, huh? That's going to be awesome. Maybe we should start working on that. לפני כמה שנים תתחיל מחסידים שעיר אס ניגון של מדינת צרפת. And this Rebbe says now on many occasions, Hasidim and Farbrengens sing the nigun of France, nigun hamafacha. It was transformed. And we know in 770, every Shabbat they sing it. They sing that nigga. Ima mila achara samuna l'chai olamim. Achara haderach ma'amona l'chai. The Rebbe sing it now. Hatchir hafasfart l'chai olamim. Zaman katzar b'yoyser la'achar mikan merachash. דבר פעלי ביוסר, מגיל הספרת ללא שינוי בניגון המדינה, וסיבס בדבר, סברים, זקנים, חסידים. We see in many of the altar Hasidim. שלאחרי שהניגון הפכה לקדושה, after this France's national anthem was transformed to a holy nigun that our Rebbe did. You know the Rebbe killed Stalin too, right? We don't have time for that story right now, but the Rebbe in a Hasidic Farbrengen in 770 basically killed Stalin, killed his ministering angel above, and took him out. It's a crazy story. Zogaran the Mata es. Oh wait, hold on. I skipped something. Argish zoist ashar umazal lemalish al medina Tzarfat, and this affected the mazal, the angel from above. Was in charge of France. And therefore below it caused the transferring of the nigun. Nigun chasidi asher sharim be'etz itvadu chasidus. Called on be'etz itvadu b'dirat sefaratzma. They're in France. Chasidim at a Farbrengen, singing a Hasidic nigun that used to be the France national anthem. It's crazy. Why? Because the Rebbe took out the ministering angel. I spoke about this at our Farbrengen in their center last Thursday night. That this is, by the way, that's exactly what just happened in Syria this past week. You don't see a country collapsing that quickly unless something's happening above. It wasn't a long, blown-out war for many years. Look what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. Look at how many countries in the world are just embedded in this year after year of war, of strife. Out of nowhere, the entire Syria just collapsed like that. Because the Rebbe took out the ministering angel of Syria. And don't think that's the last one. We're just getting the party started. ובתוך כך רואים בגילוי אס השינוי הקיצוני שנעשה בדורנו זה לגבי דורי של אדמו הזק. And now once again we see the difference here in our generation compared to previous generations, even the times of the Alter Rebbe. The koichai es hanigun hazeh hafcho oisel kadush, that the power to transform this national anthem of France into a Hasidic nigun. Haderas v'hamon lechayo elomin b'sarim oisei be'etz hitvadu chasidus shebehem midvarim divrei hitvadu be'eni haTorah b'mitzvos v'Torah chasidus ad kedi kach sheyesh ke'ilu she'enam yudoim b'klal nigun shel nilakach me'eh sham v'leh yishvim b'zeh nigun chasidi v'ikr. It became a main Hasidic nigun. That's it. He wiped out the ministering angel. Took it out. Okay, Yud Aleph. Medua, Mizchirim, Zaysak Shav. No. So what is it that we're announcing now? What is the message now? First of all, we have to increase in learning Torah. Ein lo zman klal haninim acharim klal gam mofsim ad shehem einam toifsim etzel makayim kol kach, and increase in the place we are and spreading it. Rashis, first of all, tzrich liyois hachra kadoa Hashem al hanisim shuasa. First, we must publicize and announce that Hashem has made a miracle. Especially as we find ourselves very close to the days of Hanukkah, where we're meant to pursue Nisa. One of the parts of the things we're supposed to be in Hanukkah is to spread out miracles. Hagasha be'inin shal pursumi Nisa. V'yesh lamar shezeh klal lo yirak es nes hamachama nes hanucha other pursumi Nisa shakon Nisi makadosh bo aser leBnei Yisrael yimei v'hem bizman hazeh. It's not only important on Hanukkah to talk about the war and the miracles against the Greeks, but that we're supposed to talk about miracles that Hashem has done for the Jewish people in these days at this time, right? That's what it says. It doesn't say in those days. It says in these days. We're supposed to spread out miracles of today. And the main thing is that we should announce and proclaim and give praise and thanks to Hashem for the miracles that He is doing for us now. And the goodness. And also connected to spreading these miracles is connected to the bringing of the full and final redemption. Amor Medina Hadin, the Fiha Kodesh Baruch, Azika Shanasa Lo Karnisim, Hallelujah. Lo Amar Shira Difnecha Nasa Mashiach, all Pizem Uvan Merine, to pursue Yimai Nisa, Shohanisim, Ua Kodesh Baruch is mud. And we have to continue to publicize miracles that are continuing to happen right now in our days and our times. Aizad, Noiga, the Havas, and with the Mitzvah Shem of Fall Mamish. And this is specifically connected to bringing about the true and complete redemption. In actuality, right now. Yud Beis. Mazem, Kabbalas, Hora, Ikr. And we should take upon ourselves good resolutions. Ma'achar Shekavar, Oindim, Na'achar Kohanini, Aguda Dayan Lobo. And the reality is that even though everything is ready for the redemption, we look around, we're still not in the full and final redemption. Davar Nochan B'Yoser Ahu the Oisik Me'eninja producing Nisa. First of all, we must increase in publicizing miracles. The Parsam Etzel Atzmod Ve'etzel Chazoides. Miracles from ourselves and miracles about others. In all places. As Hanisim. Shakodesh Baruch Oiser Imanu, including the miracles that Hashem is doing for us right now. Okay. And this will bring us to a higher knowledge of connection to the true and complete redemption. How much more so in the days of Hanukkah? And we should continue and have Hasidic Farbrengens over Hanukkah. But call Yoimi Me Hanukkah every day of Hanukkah. Davar Shem Divrei Torah. We should and say words of Torah. Nigala v'Torah b'Penimis Torah, the revealed Torah and the concealed Torah. The Kabbalah Hatbatas Taivas v'Koinei Torah v'Mitzvahs, and take upon herself good resolutions of Torah and Mitzvot. Boyfriend Shom Moisif l'Choylech v'Or, in a way of adding on an increasing light. Vod Ikar mainly Davar v'Eni Persumi Nisa Nisim v'Yemei Haim Bizman Hazeh, and continue spreading miracles that occurred now in our times. Gimel. And we see this emphasized even more as we're sitting here connected to France. And it's emphasizing in this Farbrengen. There's a lot of shluchim there from France at this time of this Sikha. וכיוון נמצא אז כאן קבוע של יהודים בצרפת אשר הגיע לשבת זאת. So I just said, there's many emissaries of France there that Shabbos. Beit HaKnesset Beit Midrash Shel Kavod Kadosh Adonai Nasi D'Reinu, and the home of the leader of the generation. B'prat Yehudim Ela Oiskim B'Meneas Mesudas Hadashim B'Tzarfat, to process Sfarim Hadashim, and purchasing many new holy books. Medubar La'el Ad Kamazet Noiga Birorim Shel Kala Oidam, and this is a part of the refining the world. Yosef Lekach Vadai Zeh Moisif Hatzlacha B'Kol Yanim Shel Hamit Askim B'Zeh, and you should be successful in spreading out further. Megashmis Aruchnius in physical and spiritual matters. Moisif B'Kasher Shlehem In Torah Mitzvahs, and connected to Torah Mitzvot. Aydei Zeh Shehem Musifim B'Pashtus B'Kiyam B'Torah Mitzvahs, and adding on and spreading on and increasing. Keeping Torah mitzvahs, we call michad, generally and specifically, but mitzvahs of tzedakah, the mitzvah of tzedakah, because tzedakah hastens the redemption, and the redemption of the Jewish people, which will include also the redemption of the entire world. And therefore, we should all lift up our glasses and say l'chaim. The call who's moving b'tayv l'chol Yisrael, and blessings l'chaim to all Yisrael. L'heisif shenimseim kan gam ocharim b'medinas Canada. There's many French Canadians there as well. Okay, Yud Dalet, final letter of the evening. Yiratzon Yebei God's will should be roar Mahaficha Shel Tzarfat, with the rectification and transformation of France. Yichad Im Shleimos Avodas Abiram B'Kol Edom, including together with the completion of the rectification of the entire world. Yad Techel B'Yad Mamish B'Fol Mamish Eskim HaYud V'Galus HaChol Hazel B'nei Yisrael Ad Tzarfat Yerusha Es Ari Hanin Hanegev. Oh, Yivishim Bahar Tziyai, Yishparer Esav, Yisrael Lahai Shamalucha. And we will all travel to the Holy Land, and God will judge the mountain of Esav. And will be in the true and complete redemption. For a righteous Redeemer. Sarfat Elecha Paretz, and break through all boundaries. Zeh Mashiach, and this is Mashiach. Allah Hufart Lefnehem. And it says, and the Rebbe finished up by singing the French nigga. So we will not be having a shir next Monday night because I have a wedding for one of the center guys. So we will be reconnecting in a week from Monday. So it will still be in the midst of Hanukkah. But in the meantime, have an amazing Hanukkah and a Yud Tes Kislev, a Hag Geula. And long before, we will be in the base of Mikdash with Mashiach himself. God bless you, Moshiach Now.